and these bumps on the road drive me nuts. Get it? Drive?
Who the heck wrote this, a 16-year-old? I am not an athletic person. I try to be, but I'm not. I'll either accept or deny this. Regardless, some of the sports I love are tennis, badminton, and especially bowling. I'm fairly good at tennis and badminton, but bowling, well, at least I have fun. I think my record now is around 110, but it's been years since I've set that. And I've only gone bowling a grand total of twice since the pandemic started. At least I have my video games. Over the years, I've played my fair share of bowling games, ranging from the mini games in Super Monkey Ball to Gutter Ball to Wii Sports. However, the one that stuck to me the longest is a game that I've actually spent most of my childhood on. Okay, besides that. And that. And that. And especially that. Okay, so it's in my top 10 at least. That game is Hyper Bowl, a unique game where the player has full control of the ball and rolls it to the pins. It's not standard lanes all the way through though, as the game features 6 totally different levels. Over the years, multiple versions have come out, each one differing from each other either minimally or completely, but it still holds a place in my heart. I originally reviewed this game 8 years ago, but now I am older, so let's take another look at the game to see if my opinions about it changed over the years. Here we go! Hyper Bowl was developed by a division of Sony named Sony Development, who were tasked with creating a video game attraction for Sony's in-development Metreon Mall of the Future in San Francisco. It was designed to be one of the centerpieces of the Metreon, something to make people come back to the mall again and again. They decided on making a bowling game, and some of the ideas they threw around really played with the idea of the player controlling the ball. There's even concept art for the player actually being inside the ball, kind of like Monkey Ball before that game was created, a dynamic name entering screen, and some level themes that didn't make the final cut. The core aspect of the game in the Metreon version was that the player would use a bowling ball-sized trackball to play the game, meaning the players would need to put their weight into pushing it for levels with hills or obstacles. Hyper Bowl debuted alongside the Sony Metreon's opening on June 16, 1999, and ended up being the only arcade game worth playing at the mall. I know they wanted it to be a centerpiece, but I doubt they wanted it to be the centerpiece. After its success there, the game was ordered and installed in other arcade venues, such as Dave & Buster's and GameWorks. They sold the attraction version, which was a bowling trackball unit with a huge projection screen, a rear projection version which combines the screen and trackball unit, and an arcade version that's similar to other arcade games you see around. I doubt they're still being made though. The arcade game was powered by a Windows PC with an Intel Pentium 3 processor and only 256 megabytes of RAM. Imagine how our computers today would run that game. Oh, sorry, kinda nerded out there. So how does one play Hyper Bowl exactly? Well, it is a game where the player is put in full control of the ball. You can roll that ball all 360 degrees through these lanes to push it toward the pins. If you're playing the trackball version, you roll the bowling trackball to move the ball. If you're playing on a computer, a mouse would do the trick. Aside from those unique controls, the scoring system is just like regular bowling. The initial Metreon version of the game shipped with 4 lanes, those being Classic, a bog-standard lane set under a starry night sky, Pins of Rome, a winding ruined path with vases to knock over and flowers that launch you into the air, High Seas, set on a rocking ship that makes it difficult to roll in a straight line, and San Francisco 2099, a bustling futuristic version of San Fran that features cable cars that get in the player's way, as well as a pothole and fire hydrant, but the biggest challenge is the hill at the end, requiring players to really push that ball. Later versions of the arcade game featured 2 new lanes, those being Yosemite, set in a vast forest with a river in the middle to avoid, and Tokyo, one of the world's most crowded cities that poses quite a threat to our poor bowling ball. Roll the ball to the pins without running out of time, and you'll score. Traditional gutters don't always exist. You'll find yourself losing points if you fall into rivers, cliffs, or the ocean, going the wrong way in San Francisco, or entering the subway in Tokyo. Keep that in mind as you roll around, and aim for your best score. Because the ball can be controlled in all directions, it gives you some freedom to explore your surroundings. Just not too much. That also lets you strategically plan ways of knocking down pins that weren't possible before. Do you hate 7-10 splits? Not an issue here, just roll the ball to the side of one of the pins and let loose. In High Seas, you can plan your approach so that even if you end up missing some pins, the others will be rocked by the ship and can knock down the ones you missed. You can let yourself be pushed around by some cars as well to guide you through San Francisco or Tokyo. Plus, you can just have fun with it. Whack into the street lamps or the fire hydrant in San Francisco. Knock over those vases and Pins of Rome. Push those cannonballs around in High Seas and maybe they'll even help knock some pins down for you. It's a fantasy world, and though you have a clear objective, you're allowed to approach it however you want. That's all there is to it, really. If you know how bowling works, you can just jump right into it and get started. Be warned though, the later lanes, especially High Seas, San Francisco, and Tokyo, can be insanely difficult to master. The arcade game was massively successful, and it actually did get people to come back to the Metreon. So what do you do when you have something successful? Capitalize on it! After the success of the arcade unit, the members of Sony Development who made the game split off and became Hyper Entertainment. Their next mission was to bring their game to your average Windows PC. This began with a partnership with Microsoft to ship a demo version of Hyper Bowl with the Microsoft Plus for Windows XP pack. This version of the game is the first to allow the use of a mouse to roll the ball, though trackballs would work nicely as well. It's essentially a straight port of the arcade version with only 2 lanes available, those being Classic and Pins of Rome. You also can only play with 1 player in this version. You don't get to enter a name and are just thrown into the 3D lane select screen. Including the game in Plus was a fantastic choice because it made more people that didn't live near the Metreon or a Dave & Buster's aware of the game, and Hyper Entertainment saw it was the right time to introduce a self-published version of the game for Windows. That brings us to Hyper Bowl Arcade Edition, which featured all 6 lanes and 4-player multiplayer, just like the arcade, hence the name. For use on home computers, the menu system was streamlined, allowing you to select the lane, players, and type in player names using the keyboard, leaving the mouse to control the actual game. I originally had no idea why they took out the 3D lane selector and wanted it back, but I've come to terms with the core menu and actually think it can be used in conjunction with the 3D selector. Use the 2D menu to type in names, then the 3D menu to select a lane. But that's just me. The game is otherwise exactly the same as the arcade game, but the game window is letterboxed due to the arcade version having the vertical screen. In the empty space are logos, images of different lanes and concept artwork, as well as simple instructions on how to play the game. That's also how you figure out which version you're playing. The Plus version won't have a name on the left, but arcade version is written on the left in that version. There was also a free downloadable demo of Arcade Edition that only included 1-player Classic, and it's easy to figure out if you're running that version too, not just because of the left side showing demo on it, but every time you finish the game, you're taken to the help screen to show you where you can buy the full version. That's got annoying really fast. As well, to 8 players who might not have sensitive mice or enough room to push the ball well, a speed adjuster was added. Pressing the left or right arrow keys in-game will increase or decrease the speed of the ball. It's a nice accessibility feature since people will likely have trouble with lanes such as High Seas or San Francisco if they don't have enough room to move the mouse. While developing the final versions of Hyper Bowl, the development team tossed around more ideas for other sports they could hyperify. Some of the ideas they conceptualized were Hyper Golf, though no real footage of that exists, Hyper Pool, a billiards game with full control of the cue and diverse level themes, and Hyper Dart, which would see the player using a large dart-shaped joystick to move a dart through a forest or other fantastical levels to hit the dartboard. Sadly, none of these came to fruition, so the developers focused on maintaining Hyper Bowl in its current state. The game would be distributed outside the Metreon even after it closed, and it was commonly found at Dave & Buster's arcades and restaurants. I hear tell that a few of them are still in the wild, and I want to find one someday and play it. Or buy one and have it permanently installed in my future house that I hope will have room for it. The Windows version prospered, being offered as both a CD purchase and digital download, and with people being introduced to it through the Plus for XP pack, it seemed like the game had a somewhat strong future. Then disaster struck. Windows Vista. I mean, yeah, it was a disaster, but I meant specifically for Hyper Bowl. The CD Cops DRM used for copy protecting the game was incompatible with Vista, leaving Hyper Bowl users unable to play a game that they bought legally. To add insult to injury, the CD Cops program is a 16-bit program, meaning it doesn't run at all on 64-bit versions of Windows. Hyper Entertainment either wasn't able to update the game to work on newer versions of Windows, or simply didn't want to dedicate the resources, so the game was left incompatible without removing the DRM manually. Some cracks exist that emulate the CD Cops interface, allowing the game to be playable on Vista and higher, but given the state of the original game, it lies in a morally gray area. The game itself is still compatible, given that the Plus version and Arcade Edition demo still run fine on Windows 10 and even 11, so I wonder if there was even a consideration for a Vista patch. Probably not, because the game was discontinued on April 1st, 2007, but all was not lost. A few years later, a developer named Philip Chu, who was part of Hyper Entertainment's dev team at one point, obtained a license to remake Hyper Bowl in the Unity engine. This was inspired by the iPhone and its App Store, as the iPhone's aspect ratio was similar to the screens the original Hyper Bowl game shipped with. He gained access to the source code and assets as well, but the fragile nature of the code and aging PC hardware meant he only had enough time and access to export the graphics and sounds to Unity-compatible formats before they died. From there, he put the game together piece by piece based on his earlier prototypes for bowling games. Using the Unity engine was a choice not only to make developing on the iPhone easier than messing with the original code, but it was also to make cross-platform development easier. Hyperbowl Unity released on iOS on December 14, 2009, and the game eventually reappeared on Windows, fully compatible with Vista onward, while also gaining first-time versions on macOS, Linux, and later Android. The game didn't have all the lanes right away, as it was sold in the middle of development. I discovered the project when Technicat had just added the Yosemite lane after Classic and Pins of Rome, leaving the game half complete. I then followed development on Facebook, sadly the page is no longer active, where I could offer my opinions on development of lanes such as High Seas. Now that was an interesting situation. The original iPhone's hardware wasn't strong enough to support the rocking of the boat in high seas, so for older devices the boats wouldn't rock. It was a compromise that took out the level's best feature, but it made the game run. Eventually, San Francisco and Tokyo were added for higher-end devices like the iPhone 3GS and 4, completing the whole lineup. And as minimum system requirements for iOS knocked out lower-end hardware, the limitations on lanes or gimmicks weren't necessary. Once all the levels were done and feature-filled, Technicat decided to add a few more lanes based on asset packs and prototypes. I would have loved to see this as an opportunity to bring back cut levels, but alas, that wasn't in the budget. The new lanes are as follows: a snowy slope where the player needs to roll fast in order to avoid gaps, a mushroom level where the player rolls straight, a campfire level where the player rolls straight, a level based on the Penelope 3D platformer demo Unity used to provide, and wait, Sonic Dash? Oh, no, I'm sorry, this appears to be a grassy coastal level. But gosh darn it, it made me think of Sonic for a moment there. Force of habit, I guess. Anyway, how do the controls differ? They're the same, yet different. Let me explain. You move the mouse or swipe the screen, same as before. You're also able to use the arrow keys to push the ball, which sometimes is a better option. The main differences stem from the physics. The ball isn't designed to coast like it does in the original, so when the game locks the controls to prepare to score the pins, the ball sometimes slows down to the point where it doesn't knock many pins down. I think the issue is that the ball rotating isn't adjusted properly because the ball is being pushed very fast but the rolling is slow. I know that this version of the game uses adding force to the ball to move it, while the original actually spun the ball, which was called adding torque. However, the rotation velocity limit seems to be low, and I think that's why the ball doesn't coast as much either. Honestly, just tweaking that would probably make it feel closer to the original than it does now, but hey, I'm not the developer, so I won't put pressure on anyone. As well, some lanes feature key differences. High Seas, for instance, doesn't rock very much, and it feels like the ball isn't pushed around. Some of the collision on the objects in the ship don't seem to work all the time either, and there's this one part where the ball is lifted into the air by nothing. It's weird, and it made me miss the pins a few times. San Francisco and Tokyo have traffic like before, but nowhere near as much. The cars and bikes also push harder on the ball, sometimes leading me to gutters more often than in the original. Sadly, the new lanes don't offer too much content. The mushroom and campfire lanes really are cosmetic, as it's a straight shot to the pins, just with different scenery. The Penelope lane isn't very fun because the level is way too small to line up the shot correctly. The coast lane also has a bunch of collision issues that slow down the ball, to the point where I actually run out of time fairly often. The only outstanding one of the bunch is the snow lane, which aside from occasionally being forced into this cave due to the physics engine, is a decently fun challenge to reach the pins. I welcome it. I would rag on these lanes more if the original 6 weren't in the game, but since they are, it's fine. The graphics are a decent upgrade from the original as well. The assets themselves are mostly the same, but some areas feature reflective water, bump mapping, dynamic shadows, and other lighting effects to give the game a bit of polish the original didn't. The game also supports high resolutions, as opposed to the original game being locked at 800 by 600. The sidebars, however, leave a bit to be desired. It's just the artwork they put on the Arcade Edition CD. However, that is a good approach to allow many different aspect ratios, and the game runs in full screen on mobile devices. Over the years, updates became slimmer, mostly being upgrades of the Unity engine to better support new hardware. However, around 2020, the updates stopped, even on iOS. As of right now, Hyperbowl is on version 5.06 on iOS, with its only release note being that the engine was updated to Unity 2019.2.4. This was almost 3 years ago at the time of this video's release. The game is still playable on iOS, but the lack of updates was a bit concerning. I wager part of it was because the game's license changed hands from Hyper Entertainment to Absolute Certainty, but the other part, maybe the game was just complete. It still had issues, but I suppose with all the content in place plus new stuff, the game might be considered finished. However, I didn't fully think about this until it came time to do research for this video. And here's what I discovered and feared was true. The game is officially discontinued. Philip Chu has stated on his blogs that he's not working on Hyperbowl Unity anymore, partly because he's stopped working in Unity recently. To prove that the game is discontinued, he even uploaded the scripts powering the game to GitHub. Here they are. It's literally everything powering the game except for the assets themselves. I honestly had to pause when I saw this. When was the last time a childhood favorite game of yours died not once, but twice? I'm glad the Unity version still runs on modern platforms, but the game felt like it could have gone on longer than it did. And with some retooling of the physics, it could have had an even stronger legacy than the original did. Speaking of the original, I feel bad that the game is kind of left in the dust because of its DRM. Since a handful of games recently got open sourced or reverse engineered, what I would love to see is the original game's code being open sourced or the executable being reverse engineered for preservation and education. It'd be nice to see how the original game worked so future games could be made based on that knowledge. The developers had a dream, and they shared that dream in the form of the original Hyperbowl. It would be amazing if the foundation was made available for others to realize their dream through it. I know it's a long shot to wish for that, but I want to see the game and its core live on. The dream can't die yet, right? Sorry, I don't want to end this video on a sour note. Hyperbowl is a fantastic game, and its reputation as a breakout arcade game lasted through its original PC run. I think the Unity version could have a few tweaks to feel more like the original, but what we have is fine. I remember ragging on the Unity version a bit in my original review, but I see it in a better light now. I mean, it has 4-player multiplayer, all 6 original lanes, plus some new content to round things out. I love a good party game, and if I can't get to a bowling alley personally, Hyperbowl is there to bail me out. I pray that it will continue to live on, either through the Unity version or possibly an open source version. Playing through this game again kinda makes me nostalgic for the games I played as a kid. Oh, what the heck, let's go play some of those games I played as a kid. See you next month. Phew, that was a nostalgia trip. Thanks for sticking around, and let me know in the comments if you played Hyperbowl before. Have any of you tried the arcade version with the bowling ball trackball? Please tell me how it was. I want to see one someday. Anyway, new video coming in May. See you then.